Hope you guys doing great. Let me check everything. Let's see. Okay, let me hear myself. Beautiful. All right. So, um, while this topic on governance, I can see the participation is not as high for whatever reason, but this is like the most important part of why would you would join Ghost, because we really try trying to make, as one of the whales said, this is the first project, first whatever endeavor where you actually have control over what's happening, compared to most other things that you guys do in life. So while the governance may sound a little boring, but listen, like that's the gist of what is happening. So let me finish quickly on the GhostDAO governance features, as those are almost finalized, but we're working on them already. So just like small details. So we discussed that these are the functions that I'm sharing on the screen right now, of which the three functions in particular will be very, very frequent. It's audit reserves, it's set adjustment, and create. These three functions will be the most frequent ones. And of course, we're taking inspiration from Polkadot governance, with a dynamic quorum. So essentially, uh, as we mentioned before, Polkadot has proposal referendum two-phase governance, where the first phase is to go with the proposal and then only then go to the referendum stage. Now, depending on how proposal was elected, the rule for the referendum will be applied. So, for example, if proposal was elected by the supermajority, where literally everybody voted, then it's a negative bias. So, meaning people need to vote against that specific referendum associated to that proposal. However, if the proposal has been elected by the majority, 50% of votes plus one, then in that case, we're going to go with the positive bias. Positive bias is what we inheriting with our dynamic quorum. I'm going to show this again today, right? So now, how we're thinking about proceeding with GhostDAO governance is, we're going to shoot with a positive bias. So positive bias taken from Polkadot. So let me maybe quickly share it then. So one more time. Yeah. So the positive bias will be like that, where we'll introduce like this tiny little, you know, any little adjustment of 10% minimum quorum, where we're standing at 100% majority required. So therefore, if there's no 10% quorum, then the proposal won't even go through, and then it slowly, like deflationary, I would say, right, goes to the position of 100% quorum and 50% majority required. Now, of course, 50% majority required, that's 50% plus one vote, right? So it has to be greater than 50%. So that's the curve. And that is the curve that we'll be just using for the governance, right, on the DAO. Now, the beautiful thing about this is, except for this 10% fixed component, which is definitely an issue, uh, everything else is dynamic, right? So the quorum here will be on the y-axis, on the x-axis, sorry, and now the majority vote is going to be on the y-axis. Now, on the x-axis, with the quorum, um, the dynamic feature is not a problem. Like, for example, at 40% quorum, the majority required is 76%. Now at 60% quorum, the majority required is also 66.7%. However, um, so this is perfect. This is like exactly why we introduced the positive bias curve. The problem is with this fixed 10% of the quorum. So the reason why that's a problem is because it's fixed, and everything fixed tends to be a problem. So it tends to be not necessarily a sustainable measure. So there's a protection against this in Ghost DAO, but we have to be very honest that this specific solution is not perfect, right? Like not based on our research, not a single solution is perfect, and the imperfection now solution, one of the imperfections is the 10%. So this is something to look at, meaning that if the number of inactive users is exceeding 90%. So if fewer than 10% of users, of holders of overall Ghost holders, Casper holders, cannot vote for whatever reason, because they're inactive, because they don't want to vote, because they are whatever not around, because they don't understand the proposal, uh, uh, then the like not a single proposal will be able to be elected. So therefore, the protocol is pretty much stuck. Now there are solutions around this, but more like business solutions as opposed to algorithmic solutions, like technical solutions. So, all right, so that's that. Now let's go back to the goes down governance. So that's the positive bias with adjustment, and then we have anti-spam measures, which are very important. So, uh, what are the anti-spam measures for other protocols? Well, I'll demonstrate some of them today, including the major ones, including the one. So we'll demonstrate Aave, which is the major borrow and lending protocol. We're gonna go over Olympus DAO. We're also gonna go over um, Uniswap. So those are, I would say, three major uh, protocols that everybody respects. And you would think that they have their DAOs figured out, and I'll show you that they don't. And it seems to me that most of these protocols are having DAOs for the sake of appearing decentralized in the eyes of regulators, so that their token is not considered to be a security token, and is rather considered to be a utility token, therefore they are compliant. Now, we're trying our best to not only appear decentralized, but actually be decentralized. But of course, kind of, we may fail at that. And I'll explain kind of, I think I know what the right solution is going to be, but I don't think we're going to implement this solution. Well, it doesn't seem like we are going to. Unless, of course, something changes. So I'm going to demonstrate to you as well, like the alternative solution, what could be, and essentially the future of DAOs and how the DAO, like what type of DAOs will actually be appropriate. So the reason why I went on the segue regarding anti-spam measures, the reason why we have to think about this and other protocols don't, such as Uniswap, Olympus DAO, and Aave, is in our case with Ghost DAO, the idea is that anybody can make a proposal. Anybody can create a proposal. Now, in case of other protocols, there's a major minimum required. For example, for Uniswap, I think it's half a quarter of a percent, 0.25% of the entire supply of Uniswap needs to be bonded in order to make a proposal. Now, obviously, it seems like, oh, it's just quarter of a percent, but if a protocol is like $1 billion market capitalization, you would understand that a quarter percent of that is massive. It's like millions of dollars. And how many people, how many users have millions of dollars? Same thing applied to Olympus. Like, I think it's 0.17% you must have in order to make a proposal. Again, it sounds like, oh, it's nothing. It's just 0.17%, but it's major. Olympus is, let me actually calculate it. So Olympus is 300 million market cap. So, so 1 second. I'm just trying to calculate it. So we're looking at $500,000. Now, $500,000 is not like excessive, but it's still like, so $500,000 minimum, right, for Olympus, for example, and Olympus DAO protocol to make a proposal. But it's still a lot. Like not every average Joe will be able to make a proposal, right? So it definitely kind of isolates the elites from everybody else. And here's a problem with these DAOs, and we're not solving that problem with Ghost DAO so far. So the final solution that we all agreed to, unfortunately, will be very similar, and therefore we may be subject to similar issues that other DAOs have. The problem is this: you are elite because you purchased the token earlier on, but most likely you didn't purchase the token. Most likely you were given the token. Most likely you're part of the, like, that's the unfairness component, right? So, um, like with like Aave and Uni, there have been like massive distributions to the team and the early investors. So they clearly got unfair advantage when it comes down to purchasing these and these tokens. And now they are owning disproportional amounts of Uniswap and Aave and well, in case of Olympus, it's a little bit different. So Olympus was a lot more uniform than other protocols. So now this disproportional ownership leads to the fact that the elites are being formed versus normal average citizens of these protocols. Now the elites vote, and you would argue that, well, since they vote, since they have so much stake, they are interested to make sure that their stake goes up and doesn't go down. So therefore, they're interested to make the best decision. But that's not always the case, right? Because oftentimes they just like those elites have no freaking idea what they're doing. So the protocol of the future, the DAO of the future, I believe, is the one that is connected to the KPI that is on-chain measurable without any bullshit oracles. It's just a purely on-chain, unhackable type of KPI. In Ghost DAO, that KPI is possible to be determined. That KPI would have been the balance on the treasury. So the treasury balance cannot drop. Well, it can either stay the same or go up. It can never drop. Now, I'm not talking about the valuation of the treasury. I'm talking about the quantity of native coins and quantity of LP tokens that the treasury is comprised of. So therefore, the quantity of those can either stay the same or increase, and it's impossible to game it. Meaning the gaming of it will only, like, the gamer will suffer from gaming it, right? Because the gamer will have to put 100% of their kind of holdings into the treasury only to receive 1% or whatever as benefit for the KPI to be achieved. So in any case, if the KPIs are set and they're on-chain triggerable, right? Then in that case, what's going to happen is, if the elites do not match the KPI, then they would lose a portion of their vote. However, conversely, if the KPI is being met, then they would receive a proportion over the KPI that they earned. So in that case, not just the elites would kind of be subject to taking risk, but also anybody who votes for it would be subject to taking risk. Now, conversely, those who are not voting and just inactive, those would be punished for not voting, and that's how you would increase the quorum. So I think that those are the two features that will be the kind of the features of the future of the DAO of the future. First one is KPI. An on-chain KPI that is not impossible to hack, impossible to game, and therefore those who vote for that specific proposal, not just voting, but they take a risk to achieve a KPI that is attached to that proposal. That's the first thing. First component. Second component is those who hold governance tokens and are inactive. They either have to make a decision, yes or no, or they have to get the fuck out and not hold the governance token, and thus not impact the quorum. And I'll explain why that is important. So now, with our case in Ghost DAO, the anti-spam measures are really relevant because anybody can make a proposal, and we don't have in the plans to make the minimum to be equal to 0.17% or 0.25%. We would like to make the minimum for anybody to make a proposal at 6.9 Casper, which of course at some prices may be significant. Maybe it may reach even thousands of dollars, right? As we noticed on the Ethereum Sepolia, for example, the price went up too much. It was at $50,000 per Casper. So if you're looking at 7 Caspers, it's going to be pretty much the same $500,000. But at that point in time, the backend was just $100. So now the prices became more or less normal. So now the price on Sepolia is about $300. Well, in dollar terms, $300 per 1 Casper. Well, let's call it $350. So 7 times 350 is going to be around $2,000. Still a lot. Not every single average Joe has $2,000. Like, let's be real. But a lot lower than $500,000. And that 6.9 is a lot more democratic. You would definitely agree with that. So, but since we would like to make the entry level, the entry barrier to make a proposal so low, we have to protect ourselves against spam. Because what's going to happen is, now, it's not just that the spam is bad, like, oh, we anti-spam. It's more like a malicious attacker can spam with malicious proposals, and we must protect ourselves against it somehow. So how are we going to do it? So a couple of things that we will be introducing. First of all is vote delay. So on the vote delay front, well, let me just go with the timing, right? So there's not necessarily protections, but I'll talk about protections as well while we are discussing those features. So vote delay, so this is the minimum of 3 days. So every vote will essentially have to be at least for 3 days. Now, the only exception to that we're thinking about is this. If 50% of the entire supply voted for, or 50% of the entire supply voted against, there's no point to wait for 3 days. So in that case, the 3-day period will be like kind of scratched, and then whenever that 50% of the entire supply, that's very important key, the entire supply voted for or against, then the proposal is finalized immediately and can be executed. Therefore, technically, especially in the early days, kind of the idea for us is to make sure that in the early days when the protocol really needs bonding and really needs APY, dynamic APY change, we're not waiting for like a week for these changes to take place, because those changes are operational in nature. Those tweak-ins to the protocol are operational in nature. So in that case, chances are initially, however, like despite our desire to be uniform distribution, chances are in the very, very beginning, in the first like month, a couple of months, the majority of the stake of Casper will still be controlled by the very, very few, with further decentralization through bonding. Now, the reason why that's going to be the case is this. So initially we thought that, I personally thought that maybe we need to contribute, let's assume, donate $20,000, like or more, towards the treasury. So it's going to be 10 grand going towards the LP, and then another $10,000 going towards the eGhost minting. So about $20,000 of pure donation. Like you don't see this money ever back. It's just gone. It's just donated to the protocol. And that's how the backend is being initiated. That's how the backend is in dollar terms, 3 DAI to 1 Casper. However, the more we thought about it, the more it seems like, since the DAO can be significantly gamed, and then the malicious attacker can just simply get access to the funds, to those 20 grand, because those 20,000 go to the treasury, but the attacker, if he fully controls everything, he can just drain the whole treasury. That's a possibility. That's a coded possibility. Like it's not like a hack. It's more like the attacker just simply got access to the DAO. So in that case, what needs to happen is we probably need to minimize. Well, so if the attacker got access to the DAO, no problem. Like we just launch again, right? So then in that case, we need to minimize our risk of relaunching. And the best way to do this is to not put 20 grand or 200,000 or 2 million of donation, but rather to put like a much smaller amount. Put $200, $100 for the eGhost minting, and then another $100 for the LP. So $200. Now $200 plus the gas fees. Gas fees is probably going to be a couple $1,000s to mint, to launch deploy all the smart contracts. So that's a feasible type of investment that I'm personally okay with, because knowing that, again, this investment can potentially be drained. So when we're looking at, say, $200 minimum investment, then we can, of course, launch faster, right? Because I don't need to think about, figure out all the risks. Whoever's going to be deploying this doesn't need to think about all the risks about, losing 20 grand or losing $200,000 or losing whatever the initial amount. $200 is doable. And then the ownership of those 100 ghosts, therefore, is definitely going to be a lot more centralized than it would have been if we were launching with $20,000 minimum donation, corresponding to 10,000 Casper. So again, with 20,000 donation, it would have been 10,000 Casper. With $200 donation, it's 100 Casper. Now, obviously, 100 Casper are easy to get on the DEX. Now, you're not going to get all 100 Casper, but if you put $1,000 in, you'll get, I don't know, 60 or 50 or whatever, you're going to get a majority of the DAO. So initially, the DAO will be controlled by very few, maybe by 5 people. When I'm talking about the majority vote, right? So of course, a lot more people can have Casper, but the question is how many of those users, how many of those wallets will actually be controlled in the majority? However, how do we change that? Well, easy. We change that by introducing bonds, right? So when we are launching bonds as a function through proposals, bonds enable to purchase Ghost at a discount, thus significantly diluting the existing holders, right? So that's the process. And the idea was, okay, cool. So if you do have those first 3 users, for example, 3 wallets controlling the DAO, how do we make sure that the proposals for bonds don't last for a week? How about they last for a day or an hour? Well, That's why this idea for premature finalization, that's how it came up, where like if 3 users control the majority, they just all vote, and the bond can be introduced not within 3 days. Like we don't have to wait for 3 days for the vote to finalize, but we can just do this within an hour, and boom, the bond is ready. And now we can keep decentralizing the protocol and the governance, therefore. So that has been the idea. Okay. Now, what about the late quorum? So late quorum, we thought about it differently. We thought about it being like the exponentially increasing minimum vote. So initially, what we thought was the late quorum is one user comes in and votes, and then whenever that person votes, the entire voting is extended by say 24 hours, right? So therefore, the user can keep extending that quorum forever, and therefore, Cosmos introduced the concept of exponentially increasing minimum vote amount, where like the extension of quorum at some point in time is completely corresponding to the minimum amount you need to be having to vote. But this is not correct. It seems like what's happening with late quorum is this: whenever the quorum is achieved, in our case it's 10%. Whenever the quorum is achieved, the community has another 3 days to finalize the vote. So therefore, the maximum time the vote is going to be in place is 3 days for the vote delay plus another 3 days of late quorum. So 6 days is the highest. Now, it's not going to be necessarily 6 days. In fact, chances is going to be actually within 3 days, which is pretty freaking critical, to be honest. But so check this out. So we have 3 days. The quorum of 10% may be achieved like in the first minute, right? Like somebody who made the proposal has 10% stake, or the group of them have 10% stake. They vote 10% together. Boom, within the first minute. So now the late quorum, therefore, is in effect for another 3 days. So therefore, the whole vote is 3 days and 1 minute. And that's what everybody has to vote for. Now, the question is, what if this falls on a holiday? Too fucking bad, right? So what we can play with is 3 days. Like we can play, and instead of 3 days, make it 7 days, or make in late quorum, make it another 7 days. So we can play with these constants. We can also set them later on, also through another governance vote. However, the risk is if the community is not active, too bad. Like the malicious users can come in and make shitty malicious proposals and drain the freaking treasury. So if you want to hold Ghost, you better vote, right? Otherwise, don't hold Ghost, just hold S Casper. Now, there's another concept called time lock, not applicable to us. Time lock is the time between the vote has been finalized and the actual execution of the vote. Now, the reason why time lock is such an important feature of most DAOs is because in most DAOs, the team has an unfair advantage of vetoing any vote through the multisig. In case of Aave, for example, they have 5 out of 9 multisig vote by the team throughout the time lock period, where a proposal can just be vetoed despite the community voting for it. Like, it's fucking crazy. Like, again, that's why I'm saying like most DAOs are just appearing to have a DAO, and they don't really have a DAO, and that's why those DAOs don't have, part of the reason why these DAOs don't have much participation. Now in our case, again, pretty much anybody can be able to make a proposal, and our kind of vote is a lot more democratic, if that's the right word. Like, I would not say democratic, a lot more permissionless, right? A lot more permissionless. Okay. Now, another thing is that we've been contemplating is delegate versus bond. So, do you need to lock your voting amount, or do you need to delegate your voting amount? So, in most DAOs, there's a concept called delegation. So, what does delegation mean? So, let's assume I have 100 cash, but I want to vote with it. So, if one more thing. So, before I proceed with this, so let's assume we have 1 million Casper in circulation right now. Now, with this 1 million Casper in circulation, how many people can vote? Well, 0. By default, 0. So what I mean by that is, unless the 1 million holders each delegated their quantities towards voting, they cannot vote. So let's assume the proposal has been initiated, right? And nobody delegated any of their quantities. Well, in that case, nobody can vote. Nobody can vote. Nobody can participate in this specific DAO. Not only that, but every single proposal has like essentially like an equivalent of a hash map, like essentially the distribution of which wallets held which type of quantities delegated. And therefore, like, let's assume the vote started on Monday, and then on Tuesday, I'm like, I want to participate. Let me delegate my Casper. Well, congratulations, you can delegate your Casper on Tuesday. Nobody will prevent you from that. But you are not going to be able to participate in a Monday's election because you did not delegate by the time of the proposal. So delegation is typically a manual process for which you have to pay the gas fee. Not only that, but for delegation, you can either delegate the quantity to yourself or you can delegate the quantity to somebody else. Like, for example, I'm going on a vacation for 2 weeks, and I'm not sure if the kind of the DAO is going to be, if there going to be any proposals or not. So what I could do is I can delegate my vote to somebody else for those 2 weeks, and then I kind of can come back and redelegate back. So the idea for this, like, while it's a cool feature, like if you trust somebody with your delegation power for voting, why don't you trust that person with your Casper tokens, right? Like, because at the end of the day, DAO is fully responsible for, like, it's kind of like a like a bullshit game where I can trust somebody with my DAO, but I'm not going to trust somebody with my tokens. But it's the same thing, right? Because DAO has direct impact on your token value. Because if the DAO is drained, well, your tokens are screwed. So therefore, we said no to this like kind of delegation to other parties. Like we think this is like kind of like a bullshit thing. Now, what about self-delegation? So we thought about making delegation automated. So therefore, whenever you have Casper, your Casper is self-delegated automatically. So therefore, everybody who has Casper has the opportunity to make a vote. And that way, we significantly protect ourselves against any fine draining. Because what the hacker could do is, let's say there's 1 million Casper. Now only 1,000 got delegated. Now the remaining whatever like quantity don't have anything delegated. So in that case, if the malicious attacker has 10% can get access to 10% to reach the quorum and get the majority, they can drain the whole fund. So the cost of the attack is to get 10% of the Casper in order to kind of drain the entire treasury. And then it's going to be like a math game. Is it beneficial for that specific attack or not? So in order to prevent that from happening, meaning in order to prevent an edge case situation where a significant proportion of Casper has not been delegated just because users don't know that it has to be delegated, we are going to change the backend and make the delegation self-delegation at all times. Meaning, the second you get Casper, that's Casper or Ghost, you can vote with it instantly without having to do a separate activity of kind of self-delegation. Now, the problem with that is you must pay additional gas fee for kind of, well, on the back end again, for any Casper transfer, for anything you have to do with Casper. So how much extra is going to be? It's going to be probably like a cent. It's going to be about 20,000 gas. Let me actually calculate how much this is. 20,000 gas multiplied by 0.1 divided by 10 to the power of 9 and multiplied by 3,000. So it's going to be about, it's going to be about half a penny that you have to pay for every transaction. Now you may think, oh, half a penny is nothing, but half a penny may accumulate, especially for like, non-whale users. So every single increase in gas has to be treated very, very carefully with great caution. But in this case, it's the healthiness of the DAO versus kind of a little bit of the fee that every user has to pay for anything that they do with Ghost. And kind of the idea here was that how about the users pay just to have an extra protection layer. All right, so that's that. So those are essentially the features that are going to be implemented. So it's going to be self-delegation automatically. We're going to have a vote delay, probably 3 days. Late quorum is probably going to be 3 days without exponentially increasing minimum vote because that's not needed. We'll have this premature finalization 50%. We won't have any time lock, and we're going to use a positive bias. And that's pretty much it. Now, why did we spend so much time getting to these details? Well, because we've been engaging a lot better ideas that unfortunately we probably going to put on the back burner, although not necessarily. But let me show you kind of the reason, kind of why we had to contemplate other ideas as well. So here, the way to look at other kind of the success of our DAO is to look at other DAOs. So Aave, for example. Well, actually here, sorry. So Aave. So we can see compared to Uniswap that I showed previously and Olympus that I showed previously, Aave has pretty dynamic votes, right? So Gen 22, Gen 21, Gen 15, Gen 20. I calculated almost every other day there's a proposal, which is quite interesting, right? So Aave definitely has a more dynamic proposal. Here's a problem though. For example, onboard Syrup USDC to Aave V3 base instance, right? So it's a base instance. So the problem with Aave is they have a DAO. So Aave exists on multiple blockchains, but the DAO is only on Ethereum, which is like, what the fuck is that? How's that possible? Who's actually pushing transactions onto the base? Like, if I'm making a vote on Ethereum, how do I know that something will actually happen on base? So who is this executioner to do stuff on base? And of course, that's a bullshit freaking game, right? If I understand what's happening as a voter, I know for sure that Aave is very essential as hell, right? Because my vote has to trigger that specific transaction. Because what's happening is I vote in New York, but then somebody executes my vote in Los Angeles. But that's not how it's supposed to be. Like, if I vote in New York, I need to be able to execute my own thing in New York, but I can't. Here, I won't be able to. In Aave, I won't be able to because the DAO is concentrated just on Ethereum. So that's this. Another thing is they have this whole time lock thing where 5 out of 9 multisigs can just veto any vote. So what type of decentralization is that? Okay, fine. But the positive thing about Aave is that it's pretty frequent, it's pretty operational. But upon closer look here, for example, how many people vote? Look at this. That's it. So Aave is a $40 billion project. 40 billion with a B. Look at that. 30 people vote for and like 4 people vote. Here we go. 36 people vote for and 4 people vote against. A total of 40 people out of 40 billion projects. So one billion market cap per voter. That's like insane. That's like crazy. Now, is that maybe it was just this proposal? Well, not really. Let's go to this syrup, right? Well, the one that got banned, whatever, canceled. So, let's also open couple here. So here nobody has voted for this proposal. Okay, whatever. Now for this one, how many people voted for it? Let's go show. So 42 people voted for, 1 person voted against with this non-existing bullshit power. Okay. So as we can see, the quorum, it's not that only 40. It's not like only 42 people voted for it. The problem is 42 people who voted were able to reach the quorum. That's the problem. So it requires only 40 people to reach the quorum. What's the quorum on Aave? I think it's 2% of the entire supply. It's nothing. So what happens to the 98%? That's the problem. What happens to the 98% of voters? How come they don't vote? So that is the inactivity on the DAO side of things, and I think it's happening due to what I said. If you're multi-chain, you need to have DAO multi-chain as well. Otherwise, don't go multi-chain, right? And be stuck with all this multi-sig stuff, right? Because that's just pathetic. Okay, fine. Aave is bad. What about Uniswap? Uniswap, the kings. Even we said they're the kings. So check this out. So 125 million people voted, right? 43 million people voted, 52 million people voted. Uniswap tokens voted. 41 million people, Uniswap tokens voted. So probably a huge DAO. So check this out. So this one has been actually the most popular one, this vote. First of all, from the decision making perspective, check this out. This is December 27th, 26th. This is September 10. So over the last 2-3 years, right? We have maybe 30 proposals, 40 proposals total. So they happen maybe every month, once a month. So clearly those are not operational. Clearly they're way more strategic. Now, how many people represent the 125 mil? Well, we can see it because Uniswap is conveniently representing these, right? So I counted. It's about 30 to 40 people who are able to get to the 90% plus of this 125. million uh, decision making, right? Now it's out of 40 million. So you would argue, oh, 40 million quorum. So 40 million is the quorum required. So you would say, oh, 40 million, that's a lot. That's what I thought. Until I found out that 40 million represents 4% of the total supply. So the minimum quorum required is 4%. So for Aave, it's 2%. For Uniswap, is 4%. So what happens to the 96% of voters? Now you would say, well, okay, fine. This is 4%, but here's essentially 125 million. Therefore, it's 12%. It's a huge participation. Absolutely agree. I agree with you. However, if you look at these proposals, this proposal has been the largest, like the most attained, the most participated on, right? Because all the other ones are just barely above the quorum, just above 40 million, just above 40 million, just above 40 million, just above 40 million, just above 40 million. Like, and how many people vote for it? Same. Like, it's pretty much the same, like 20 people who would represent this quorum. So if you look at who voted, so they conveniently represent it. So check this out, right? So at 40, to get to 40 million, if you hold like 3 to 4 million, what's this word? Tokens, you need like 10 people. That's exactly what you have. You have about 10 people who voted for it, maybe 20. That's it. Everybody below this doesn't matter. They're irrelevant because the quorum has been achieved. Now, the argument is, okay, fine. So that's a proof of stake model. That's how it's supposed to be. If you want to participate in the vote, go and fucking buy Uniswap. Yes, but how did you guys get how did somebody here got 5 million shares of Uniswap? How did you get those 5 million shares? 5 million Uniswap tokens? How did you get it? I mean, did you buy it off the market? Or was it given to you by the team because you're the team member or you are the early investor? How did you get those? Now, we're going to talk about something similar in Ghost DAO because we have something similar potential, but we don't. That's the problem. We don't. Well, that's the advantage that we don't. Same thing, by the way, going back to Aave, right? Okay, so I fine. Like, how did somebody right? How did somebody get 43,000 of the token? How did somebody get 58,000 of the token? Right? Because again, that represents like significant proportion of the entire supply. Was it given to you? How did somebody get 74,000 of the token? Was it given to you? Did you buy it at a discount? Of course, it's a different story if it was kind of delegated by a community. Like say this Arita Golf, right, is like a community, or our token logic is like a community kind of leader, and then community members kind of contributed. Okay, fine. But then in that case, how come it's only 2% quorum required? It seems like 2% and the 4% are calculated based on the following. How many tokens do we as a team have? Okay, cool. We have like 2% or 4% or more. Okay, cool. Now some team members don't not with the project anymore. So the remaining team members who are still with the project, do we still have 4%? Cool. Okay, that's gonna be 4% minimum then. I think that's how it's calculated because there's no fucking mathematical idea why it's 4%, 2%. Like there's not a single country in the world or entity in the world where it's 2% or 4% quorum. It's fucking pathetic. Now we looked into the corporate governance, the corporate boards of directors. So guess what? Like, I mean, you can like try to like think about like in Web 2, like Web 2 so centralized. Okay, how many people in Web 2 vote for decisions on the corporate boards? So do your own research. Based on my research, I found 2/3 of boards, or 2/3 of directors on boards make consistent decisions. So participation is insane. It's no close to 4% or 2%. It's like 6%. It's very good. It's very high. Now if you go for like, some people say, oh, United States, the quorum is only 50%. Could have been a lot better. Listen, United States is 350 million people. Now, if you remove anybody who cannot vote, who not eligible to vote, maybe it's about 200 million people. Of the 200 million people, 100 million people cast votes. That's insane. That's a major success. That's like insanely successful. Now, I mean, out here we're talking about fucking 40 wallets voting for it. Not 100, not 40 million wallets, 40 wallets. So how come it's only 2%? And that's a problem, right? So, same thing with Uniswap as far as like the kind of the 4% here on this front. There are all these centralization, things here and there, starting from how did anybody got so many unit tokens to like all these like time locks where the team can actually bend stuff. And we can see this centralization with V3 and V4 coming into game, right? Because, large boys, large investors kind of came on to Uniswap and said, hey, you guys are a business. You're not like this DAO. You're not these, crypto boys, right? You are the grown-ups. You're the Web 2.5 grown-ups, so how about you act like that? And that's how they're acting. Because before, well, it's also kind of important to mention, Uniswap did not start with a DAO. Uniswap did not have a DAO when they launched. It was always a team, and then the DAO was later introduced. And that's why they have what they have. Okay, now what about Olympus? So Olympus, arguably, supposed to be the most decentralized. Why? When we go to Uniswap, right, like the decision from establishing Uniswap V4 licensing process, for fuck's sake, not necessarily impacting the price of the uni, right? Because the Uniswap's idea is to have LPs benefiting, right? Like liquidity providers benefiting by providing liquidity. So if you are a uni token holder, you're not necessarily benefiting from like establishing Uniswap V4 licensing process. What the fuck is that? Right? Let's now do KYC. KYC process is going to be next, most likely, for uni. They already started doing it, by the way. Now with Aave, same thing. Like, how does the Aave token is kind of, how you as a token holder benefiting from kind of Aave going up or going down? Let me paraphrase. How does this governance vote impact the price of the Aave? Not really. Doesn't really impact it. Now, with Olympus DAO, therefore, with Ghost DAO, while these proposals don't do shit either, like a Solana CCIP bridge activation, like what the fuck's, like come on, whoa, come on. OIP post audit OCG upgrade, like stuff like migrate the reserve token from DAI to USDTS. Okay, good. So like from DAI, which is not KYC, to USDS, which is KYC. Like for fuck's sake, who is doing these proposals? Like Olympus DAO is not what it was. Like the original team most likely left. You can see this, by these stupid proposals. However, in the early days, again, Olympus was not a DAO in the early days, but we are going to be the DAO in the early days, meaning the bond and the APY will be directly benefiting the treasury. Therefore, it will be directly benefiting the holder of Ghost. Like here, for example, check this out. So, the treasury is 4.5 million. Now, any bond creation, if users buy the bond, right, the users who buy the bond will be directly increasing this balance. So therefore, if the bond is set up correctly, in the benefit of the treasury, this backing will be increasing as well. Now, if this backing is increasing, then the price shall be increasing on the DEX as well. But then if the price on the DEX is increasing, then this price must be directly increasing. Why? Because this price is just simply that price on the DEX multiplied by the coefficient. So now, and that's the Casper price. So the bond directly impacts the Casper price. So if you are the Casper holder, you shall be voting for the bonds. You shall understand how the bonds work. You should also vote for APY. So currently the APY is at 60, like call it 69%. Now, if the APY is increasing, what's going to happen is it will be diluting this. Now, if this is going to be diluted, then the price is also going to be dropping. If the price is dropping, then this price is going to be dropping as well, right? Because it's this price multiplied by the index. So why would you increase the APY? Well, you would not increase the APY in isolation. If you increase the APY to attract more traffic flow, right? Let's assume instead of 69% here, it says 10,000%. A lot more users will come and participate in bonds. So it's a game, right? It's a game of options, right? Like game of opportunities, decision tree, where like every single decision is a complex thing. Like it's not just, let's do bond in isolation, let's do APY in isolation, let's do them together. In fact, we're making proposals that are semi-function at the same time. So you can make 10 different functions within one proposal so that we can accelerate the governance, right? So therefore, we're building a constructor type of user interface for that. So in that case, as you can see, your decisions are directly impacting your Casper price, so you shall be participating. It's very different from other protocols. So maybe that's how we're going to be able to beat the inactivity disease, right? But with Olympus, for example, like So that's kind of why with Olympus it's probably better, because whatever the decisions are here, if they are kind of at least more or less practical, they'll be impacting the GOM price, and therefore the holders of GOM will be directly benefited or not, right? But the problem with Olympus, same. So check this out. The quorum here, the minimum quorum is 20%, and 33% is achieved, which is like huge, right? Because like with Olympus, with Uniswap is like 4%, like actual participation. With Aave is like about 2% actual participation. With Olympus, it's 33% actual participation. But let's look closely. So participation, that's it. These are all the voters. That's it. Against, nobody against. So all voters, which is like, I don't know, 20 people, 30 people. Now these guys don't even count. That bounces on nothing. So we have like, again, to reach that quorum, we have like, the quorum is what? Arguably, well, whatever. So like if 18,000 geomes is 33%, let me calculate it, right? So we have 18,000, that is 33%. Now we need to reach 20%. So in order to reach 20%, we'll require about 11,000 ghost, well, geom. So boom, boom. So these 4 people, essentially, these 4 accounts are enough for any decision to be elected. That's it. That's the decentralization of Olympus, practically. And Olympus, I would argue, is more decentralized than other protocols. So that's like crazy. So the disease that we have with DAOs is lack of participation, and lack of participation is most likely due to the fact that as a voter, I simply don't understand what am I specifically getting from voting. So what is my meat? What is my upside? What is my downside? And that's why I'm thinking that the DAO of the future will be the DAO that is connected to the KPI, and those who voted yes, risking their voting power if they do not achieve the KPI, and if they do achieve the KPI, they benefit. Can we introduce that KPI backed governance model? And we thought about it in much detail. That's why we took time, right, to kind of to really dive deeper into different alternative ideas. And the reason why so far we decided to put this on the back burner is due to the fact that we are not able to isolate the KPI of one proposal from the KPI of another proposal. So so proposal 1 and proposal 2, if they are introduced one after the other, like proposal 1 is on Monday, and then proposal 2 is on Tuesday, and then proposal 1 is for 3 months, and proposal 2 is also for 3 months. How do you differentiate which upside from KPI from proposal 1 is attributed to proposal 1, and similarly which KPIs from proposal 2 are attributed just to proposal 2? So because of that was placed on the back burner immediately, unfortunately, although that KPI backed thing was very, very cool. However, the more I'm thinking about this, and what we'll be introducing to the team again tomorrow, is how about we just, like, if the proposal with the KPI has been set, how about, let's assume it's for 3 months. If that's for 3 months, then you introduce an option of pre-cancellation of the proposal, where the proposal is canceled ahead of time in case it does not reach the KPI with some type of penalty. Or for 3 months, no other proposal can be set. So therefore, the first proposal just must be there for 3 months, and therefore the KPIs can be kind of measured in isolation. So again, it's a pretty like for strategic decisions that do happen once in a blue moon. I'm surprised that Uniswap and all the others don't have like a KPI backed proposals. But we're going to be keep engaging the opportunity, the possibility for GhostDAO to have something like that. But before we are able to come up with something, as I mentioned in the PowerPoint presentation earlier today, the features are pretty much decided. The user interface is pretty much finalized as well. And we are kind of on the path to delivering GhostDAO very soon. And once the GhostDAO like the DAO, the governance of the Ghost DAO is delivered, we'll have to redeploy Sepolia. So we'll let everybody know ahead of time to bridge their Casper balances to Ghost, right? Because they'll lose you guys will lose everything, and we're gonna redeploy Sepolia from scratch with the governance, and everything from there on will be essentially decided by the DAO. Okay, so that's what we have. Very, very technical stuff. We spoke about 6 months ago. It's almost 6 months now. Time flies. Around 6 months ago, when we introduced the concept of Vita money. So I think a lot of you guys liked it. Vita money really resonated with me as well. It was like more of a vision type of thing, which inspired lots of other activity from some community members, some whales. But last, I would say like 3-4 months, we've been excessively focused on the product side of things. And there's a reason for that, because we need to accelerate the product deployment, and we need to start deploying this thing. And everybody needs to start getting ready. And if you think that you'll get ready a week in advance, you are wrong. And I need to be very, very clear about this. As we're getting closer and closer to deployment, the team will not have, like, the team's time available is going to be lower and lower. So, like, you can still ask some questions, and as you can see, the responses from the team have been a lot more rare than they have been a year ago, right? So you can imagine then once we deploy, the team will be very unavailable. So if you have questions, you need to ask your questions now. And please do not feel bad when you're not going to get responses around the time of the launch and you don't know what to fucking do, because you expect that the team is going to be like super, like, explaining stuff. Why not going to be there necessarily is because we're going to be super busy with tracking stuff, making sure there are no vulnerabilities, making sure everything is working, on par, fixing UI issues, fixing some UX issues, rebuilding some UX and stuff like that. So we're going to be extremely busy around the launch. So if you have questions, you need to ask your questions now. Right? Do not expect the team to respond to you in detail around the launch and closer to the launch. Like, the function is this: as we're getting closer to launch, and we've been getting closer to launch since I would say September of 2024, when we launched the first Casper. As you can see, the team is less and less available, and that trend will only continue. So the team will be even more unavailable as we're getting closer to the launch. So that leads to 2 conclusions. Conclusion number 1, if you want to learn anything, ask questions now, be active now, participate, help us actually build stuff now. Because your questions, your feedback, your curiosity helps fire fuel in us, right? And we actually able to, to maybe even conduct better work, because we see curiosity, we see different angles, we see different considerations, we see different edge cases and stuff like that. So that will kind of accelerate the product launch, but not only that, it will help shape the product itself, right? It will just be a better product. And most importantly, you will learn how to do it, and then you getting the unfair advantage compared to your competition. Because we're gonna write some docs, we're gonna write some guides, but I mean, if you guys know how to read those guides, good, but they're gonna be pretty detailed and formulaic. So if you don't have like this developer mathematician mindset, then it's gonna be difficult for you to understand what's happening. So therefore, you have to be kind of engaging in trial and error. And trial and error leads to to unnecessary losses. So that's the first conclusion. Second conclusion that I've been mentioning, that the whole team have been mentioning forever now. If you have anybody to bring to this project, bring them now. It takes time to learn. So whether that somebody is your friend, or whether that somebody is a peer project, like, say, some chain, like a Pulse chain or Ethereum Classic chain or Tron, like, if you have any of these connections that you would like to really engage, time is now. Because as we're getting closer, you'll start having lots of questions, and the people you bring in will have lots of questions. And guess what? The team is not going to be fucking available to respond to your questions closer to the launch. So you look like a fucking idiot, because you'll bring all your connections, they'll start asking you questions, and you'll say this is the best project ever, and they start asking you questions, and you don't know what to say because you don't have the answers. Then you start diving into the guides, and you just won't be able to understand guides. right? Although we try to distill this information as simple as possible. And then you look like a fucking idiot, right? And you're not going to be able to onboard these projects either, right? So, like, if you're hoping that last second something is going to happen, it's not going to happen, right? I would say that for the next 6 to 12 months, this is the right time to learn, ask questions. If you want to benefit from DAO and from Ghost Chain overall, the next 6 to 12 months is the time. After this, I'm telling you guys, we're going to be a lot more unavailable because there's going to be so many moving parts. I'm telling you already how I'm waking up. The first thing I'm checking is the bridge. Is the bridge fucking working? Then I'm checking the whales. Are there any notions that any bridging transaction did not go through? Then I'm checking the node. I'm looking at, okay, do we have finalization? How many periods we have? And as we're getting closer to launch, and once we launch, the number of these checks will only increase. All right? Because then once we launch, we'll have the DAO to check, and we'll have the DAO to check on every single chain. Because we'll have a DAO on every single chain. So if you have 5 chains, I need to check DAOs on every single one of those 5 chains in detail. And then I also need to check the DAO on the Ghost. And that's going to be our daily activity, checking stuff. We won't have time to respond to fucking questions. So I just want to kind of make it clear that you guys have been notified about it. I'll still be kind of mentioning it down the road, but kind of I just want to make it like kind of more or less explicit. All right, on this exclamation note, see you guys next week. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye.